My mother saw the little fox dragging a chicken in from outside, then using the chicken blood to feed me. This scene made my mother inevitably think of my older brother who loved drinking chicken blood. She was so terrified that her soul seemed to flee her body. In her diary, my mother wrote that she couldn't bear to leave me. But she was truly too afraid of witnessing me die before her eyes once again. Moreover, recently at night, she often heard the sound of someone adding firewood to the stove in the living room, which kept making the little fox run out to check. She said she knew it was my father coming to take her away, and she had no other choice but to leave. She hoped that when I grew up, I could strive to improve myself, and one day leave this mountain to live in the city, forever leaving this place behind. My mother hanged herself in front of our house, and kind neighbors helped bury her. After my mother's death, some good-hearted people in the village took pity on our family's situation. They discussed taking turns caring for me, even finding a wet nurse from over 10 surrounding villages to breastfeed me. But from the very first day that plan started, I, the strange child, threw the entire village into panic and fear. I refused the wet nurse's milk. Fine, that could be accepted. But then, mysteriously, I disappeared by midnight. The whole village stayed up all night searching everywhere, only to finally find me lying in my own home. A baby just 1 month old. Even if it knew how to leave, how could it possibly go from someone's house at the foot of the mountain back to its home on the mountainside all in one night? This story terrified everyone. Later, some suspected that the first family who took me in didn't truly pity me but pretended just for show. They deliberately returned me home. It sounded plausible, so people were less worried, and a second family took me in. But from then on, similar events kept repeating. Families took turns sending me back home, and after the last family personally experienced this nightmare, they were too scared to take me in again. From then on, people began to avoid my home. Even when going to work on the mountain, they took detours to avoid my house. My parents gave me a name, the Ghost Child. Time passed quickly, and no one expected that the ghost child, whom everyone thought would surely die young at home, was miraculously growing up day by day. News of me spread throughout a 10-mile radius, and my reputation grew larger and larger, to the point that anyone who saw me was as frightened as if they'd seen a ghost, hurriedly avoiding me. Even worse, whenever I shamelessly wandered to someone's house, after they'd chased me away, they would invite a shaman to perform an exorcism ritual. Whenever they saw a dirty child accompanied by a small white dog, they would shout, "The ghost child is out. Quick, hide." When I was young and didn't understand, even though every family in the village disliked me, I would still shamelessly go to their houses, trying to play with the village children. But everyone avoided me. Some even hid inside their houses, opening their windows to throw rotten eggs at me. However, these people often encounter misfortune, their clothes torn by something, or their livestock suddenly disappearing. Precisely because of this unusual environment, the concept of communication almost didn't exist in my world. Fortunately, I wasn't as lonely as people thought. The little fox became my only friend. In the mountains and forests, on the dirt paths, everywhere bore the footprints of me and the little fox. The more remote places like deep forests or small streams saw more of me and the fox. The only thing was, whenever I tried to go towards the ruined temple in the east, the little fox would fiercely bite me, preventing me from advancing. When I was young, I always obeyed the little fox's commands. In my perception, it was like my mother. Every night, it would run outside and bring back wild chickens or birds. It ate the meat, and I drank the blood. Throughout my childhood, the little fox and I were almost never apart. Early in the morning, it would lick my face clean, then lead me running and jumping through the forest. At night, I sat in front of the house watching the stars and moon. While it sat beside me, ears always perked up, listening. But only until 10 p.m., when it would fiercely bite my clothes, forcing me inside to sleep. Things continued like this until I learned to climb the wall of the elementary school, secretly listening to the teacher's lessons. Gradually, I understood more about the world, and I realized that for a fox to do such things was truly too strange. Those simple yet bizarre days lasted until I was 15 years old. However, there were some changes during that time. As I gradually grew up, the close relationship between me and the little fox also began to change. For example, it no longer slept in the same bed with me. Sometimes, it was like a shy little girl. Whenever I took off my pants to bathe, it would immediately turn its face away. These changes didn't make me pay much attention, but some events that happened later caused the relationship between me and the little fox to increasingly fracture. By then, I had secretly learned the entire elementary school curriculum. My knowledge of the world was also increasing daily. I began to change, becoming irritable and restless, always jealous of the children who could attend middle school. Still using the old method, I walked 7 to 8 kilometers every day to the middle school in town, climbing the wall to secretly listen to lessons. But middle school management was very strict. Every time I was caught by the security guard and chased away. This made me depressed for a long time. Every day, I was preoccupied, wanting to find a way to contact people in the village, hoping to ask them how to attend middle school. Having had little contact with people since childhood, I didn't know much beyond the basics. In everyone's eyes, I was a poor, strange, and foolish kid. Even though I grew more understanding and knew how to behave politely, the villagers still rejected me, even cursing and saying very unpleasant things. Because of these things, my attitude towards the little fox gradually changed. Whenever I was sad, it would run over to lick my face and play with me, as if trying to cheer me up. But I was young then, with a fiery temper. Once, in anger, I swung my hand and hit it twice. From the first time I hit it, the distance between us grew wider. The little fox no longer woke me up every morning, no longer walked in the forest with me, no longer watched the moon with me, no longer forced me to sleep or led me to the river to bathe. It also no longer found food for me on time as before. Instead, it would often be gone all night, not returning until the next morning. Once, it left before it was even dark. Coincidentally, I had just given up sneaking into town to secretly listen to junior high classes and was bored out of my mind at home alone. So I decided to secretly follow it, wanting to know what it did every night when it left. The little fox led me to the forest behind the mountain where we loved to play when we were young. There was a small stream there where we often bathed together. At the time, I thought it was going to bathe without me and felt a little annoyed. But when I ran to the stream bank, I didn't see the fox anywhere. Instead, I saw a girl without clothes in the water. That girl had soft, long black hair, snow-white skin on her back, and was sitting with her back to me, playing with the water. Even though I couldn't see her face, I could feel her extraordinary beauty. Even though I was a fool, I knew peeping at a girl bathing was wrong. Not seeing any sign of the fox, I had no choice but to quickly return home. From that day on, the image of that girl's snow-white figure kept appearing incessantly in my head. On nights when I sat watching the moon, I held my face, thinking endlessly. I also frequently returned to the forest behind the mountain to search, but never encountered that girl again. I gradually realized that it was as if my soul had been stolen by that girl's image. Every day I was tired, lethargic, and didn't feel like doing anything. Even when the little fox ran over to play, it couldn't pick the right moment. Just when my longing for the girl reached its peak, the little fox started its usual antics, jumping on me and biting my hand. Once, I got angry, threw it to the ground, and hit its head hard twice. That was the hardest I ever hit it. Other times, when I hit it, the little fox would usually sulk and run into the deep forest, not returning until the next day. But this time was different. It didn't run away, but turned back, curled up on the pile of firewood, and burrowed into the stack. When I approached, its small eyes were still teary. The next morning, the little fox left. At first, I thought, like every other time, it would return the next day. But I never expected that this time, its departure would be permanent. I searched everywhere we used to play, turned over 10 villages and 8 hamlets, even the farthest places my feet could reach, but I still couldn't find any trace of it. During that time, I truly understood the meaning of the word loneliness. With tears streaming down my face, I constantly remembered the days when the little fox took care of me. I searched for the little fox for over a year, but found no clues at all. I started thinking about leaving this village, going to other places to find the little fox. But I couldn't bear to. I was afraid that if I left and the little fox returned and couldn't find me, what would happen? So I continued living in this house, enduring long, bitter and lonely days, stubbornly waiting for the little fox to return. Time passed, and 3 years went by. That year, I was about 18 years old. My age was only estimated by comparing me with other children, as I had no idea of my birth date. I didn't know why my parents abandoned me, or if they ever returned. I only knew that I was a parentless child, raised by a little fox, a ghost child. For 3 years, the little fox still hadn't appeared. Finally, I revisited all the places we used to play together, then took a walk around the village. On an overcast day, without the little fox, I got up early from bed, put on my homemade straw sandals, draped on my tattered clothes, and slung an old sack I'd found by the river over my back. I stepped out of this old, broken-down house. I had decided to leave. I planned to wander outside, searching for the little fox. But just as I locked the door, my eyes already wet, a large magpie suddenly flew to the front of our gate. The magpie landed on the pear tree in the yard, holding something wrapped in a red cloth in its beak. It opened its mouth, dropped that thing in front of me, then hopped about on the tree, chirping incessantly. It wasn't even afraid of me. It even flew down and stood right on that thing, persistently chirping without stop. Only when I reached out to pick up the red cloth-wrapped object did the magpie stop chirping and fly up into the pear tree, watching me intently. When I opened the red cloth, the magpie flapped its wings and flew away. Inside the red cloth was a wooden box, and when I opened it, there were 2 things inside. The first was a bundle of long hair wrapped in red cloth. That hair was black and shiny, soft, emitting a very pleasant fragrance. It was tied horizontally, as if intentionally cut from some girl's hair. Chapter 5. The Bride of Unclear Origin. At first, I thought this was something the magpie had mistakenly stolen from someone else, unrelated to me. But when I saw the second item in the box, I froze. That item was a piece of leather. I knew it was definitely the skin of some animal, but I wasn't sure what kind. On the piece of leather was written a line of very elegant calligraphy. Haven't cared about you for 3 years. Do you miss me now? I miss you too, but who told you to always like bullying me? Under your bed, there's something. Quick, pull it out and look. After looking, come find me. I've already prepared the wedding gifts, waiting for you. Just this short sentence left me stunned and speechless. I told myself that this probably had nothing to do with me, but I felt an incredibly familiar and intimate feeling, as if these words were truly meant for me. I pondered over it, but still couldn't understand what was happening. Finally, I placed the box outside the door. If it belonged to someone else, they would surely come back for it. After putting the box down, I looked back at the dilapidated village where I had lived for over 10 years. The feeling was indescribable. I didn't want to leave, but I couldn't stay either. As I thought, I worried. If the little fox returns and can't find me, what should I do? Looking at the pear tree in front of the door, its flowers about to bloom, I sighed. I told myself I would wait one more morning. If the little fox still hadn't returned by today, I would leave in the afternoon. Thinking that, I opened the door, intending to go inside. But as soon as I stepped in, a girl's voice, clear and melodious, suddenly sounded from behind. I turned to look. A strange girl was standing at the end of the path. She was wearing a white dress, her skin so fair it seemed like water could be squeezed from it, her big eyes sparkling, and her figure much more beautiful than any rural girl I had ever seen. She was so beautiful it stunned me. The girl looked about my age. How to describe it? The moment I saw her, my heart thumped wildly, as if wanting to jump out. From birth until now, aside from the beautiful back I still couldn't forget from childhood, this was the first time I had seen such a beautiful girl. She stood there, smiling at me, her hair falling over her chest, her hand gently brushing her hair aside repeatedly. Her gaze occasionally dodged, looking very shy. I looked around. There was no one else. Since childhood, I had almost never spoken to anyone. The word communication was still foreign to me. I only dared to stand there, look at her for a few seconds, then, embarrassed, turned to go inside. Wei Qing, why are you ignoring me? She unexpectedly called me again. In this village, no one dared to come to my house. This place was deserted. Who was she talking to? Thinking that, I turned back to look at her. You're talking to me? She nodded slightly, smiling, then shyly lowered her head, her hand continuing to brush her hair. Oh, I see. You came to get your things, right? I picked up the items the magpie had dropped and walked towards her. What things? She asked, tilting her head. When I got closer to her, I smelled a familiar fragrance. From birth until now, I had never smelled such a familiar scent, except for the fragrance from the lock of hair earlier. But then I realized the scent from the lock of hair wasn't the same as the fragrance on her. I stood there frozen, not knowing what to do. The girl laughed, then said shyly, I'm your wife. My wife? I was so shocked I almost dropped my chin. You're talking to me? After speaking, I even turned to look behind me, making sure there was no one else. Damn, was I encountering a ghost? That's right. 18 years ago, your mother brought you to Qingqiu Mountain to propose marriage. Back then, I was still young. I searched for you for a long time, finally found you, the girl said happily. That statement left me stunned for a full 10 minutes, just standing there looking at her, to the point where the girl also started feeling embarrassed. But when I snapped out of it, my expression changed. The redundant knowledge the elementary school teachers didn't teach was one thing, but the lessons on avoiding scams were taught very thoroughly. The teachers once said that in the city, there were many human trafficking rings with all kinds of sophisticated tricks, especially, one needed to be wary of strangers. This girl, I had never met her before, yet upon meeting, she said she was my wife. Who would joke like that with a poor, destitute person like me? If not foolish, she was definitely a human trafficker. Thinking this, I sighed and said, Girl, you should go. I'm just a ghost child, not worth anything. After speaking, I turned to go inside. Wait, I'm not lying. I really am your wife. She hurriedly explained, even running after me. At first, I was very calm. Waiting until she was almost catching up, I rushed into the house, slammed the door shut, then hid behind the door, not daring to breathe heavily. Before, when secretly listening in class, I heard some classmates say that city girls were very good at deceiving people, and the more beautiful they were, the more dangerous. Wei Qing, open the door. I really am your wife. Don't you know about this? Where's your mother? The girl's voice still came from outside the door. I don't have a mother. You've mistaken me for someone else. Go away quickly, I replied loudly. No mother, she exclaimed in surprise. That's right. Then, is your name Wei Qing? If so, then I'm not mistaken, she continued calling. What, Wei Qing or Spice? Girl, I really don't understand what you're saying. My name is Ghost Child. I don't have any other name. Actually, this was the first time in my life I was truly having a conversation with someone, so I was a bit nervous. That's strange. Could I have mistaken the person? Her voice gradually softened. Then, from a distance, came a sentence. I'm sorry for bothering you. Hearing that, I breathed a sigh of relief, but upon second thought, I felt something was wrong. The teacher once said that human trafficking mainly targeted children. So, why would they want to kidnap a big guy like me? Thinking this, I hurriedly opened the door to look outside. But unexpectedly, it was empty outside. No one was there. Unbelievable. I walked around the house to check, but still couldn't find the girl from just now. This scared me stiff. The area in front of my house was very open. Even the nearest forest behind the mountain was several hundred meters away. I grew up here and knew the terrain well. To run out of sight of the house, even at full speed, would take over 10 minutes. Yet, in the blink of an eye, she had disappeared without a trace. Could it be I encountered a ghost? This panicked me. I hurriedly barred the doors and windows, then sat dazed in the living room, my mind in chaos, my soul seemingly flown away. The house had nothing besides an old set of furniture. Only the few items in my hand were noteworthy, a lock of hair and the piece of leather with writing. I sat there, staring intently at these items, then thought, Maybe I should check under the bed to see if there was anything. Perhaps there really was something meant for me. So I ran into the bedroom and started rummaging under the bed. And I really found something strange. A few ancient copper coins and a broken red string. I held these things for a while. What was written on the leather piece originally didn't concern me, and I paid even less attention now. But when I felt around the bed leg, I suddenly froze. I had just pulled out an old notebook covered in dust. What was this? My house didn't even have electricity. The room was pitch dark, and I couldn't see the contents inside. I took the notebook to the living room and opened it to look. It took me over an hour to finish reading that notebook. Afterwards, I sat in front of the house, my mind full of contradictions, constantly scratching my head, trying to make sense of everything happening to me. Finally, I began to suspect that the content in the notebook probably recounted events before I was born. Initially, I didn't believe it was about me, because for someone who had lived emptily for 18 years, suddenly encountering such things was hard to accept. But at the end of the notebook, there was a line. Child, if one day a magpie comes to your door, that day is your 18th birthday. That night, you must go to the ruined temple in the east to check. I stared at this line, stunned for over an hour. That ruined temple. Even I and the little fox had never been there. But since childhood, I had known of this place, because no one living in this area didn't know about it. The eerie stories about the temple had been told and retold, becoming bizarre legends that terrified anyone who heard them. Even though I was called a ghost child by the villagers, feared and avoided, whenever I tried to run towards the temple, even if the little fox couldn't stop me, there were always old folks in the village preventing me. They said there were ghosts there, and going there would get me eaten by ghosts. This statement once became a shadow in my childhood. Thinking of those things, I found it hard to believe the story in the notebook was related to me, so I picked up the notebook and read it again. Although I found it hard to believe that what was written in the notebook was related to me, I still immediately stood up and prepared a torch. Whether right or wrong, before leaving here, I wanted to go to the eastern forest to see if that ruined temple really existed. This was something I had always wanted to do, but never dared. Now that I was about to leave, if I didn't go see, would I have another chance later? Chapter 6. The Taoist from Maoshan. After preparing the torch, it was still early. Sitting at home was pointless anyway. So I ran around the village, looking for some old person to ask about my childhood matters. But the villagers still disliked me as before. Before I could get close, they shut their doors tightly. In the afternoon, I took the box left by the magpie and went to the next village. The only person mentioned in the notebook was Old Man Lee from the next village. The people there, although not very friendly towards me, at least didn't avoid me like the people in my own village. I found Old Man Lee, over 80 years old, still working in the fields. I asked him about Liu Banxian. At first, Old Man Lee chatted with me a few sentences, but when he heard me mention Liu Banxian, his face immediately changed, and he picked up his hoe, intending to leave. Grandpa, I just want to ask if our village really had someone named Liu Banxian? Why are you avoiding me? I was confused, following behind him. Child, Liu Banxian has been dead for over 10 years. He turned back, looked at me with a strange gaze, then lowered his voice and said, Don't ask anymore. Listen to me. Be careful to avoid ghosts at night. After speaking, he was about to leave, but I quickly grabbed his hand. Then I won't ask anymore. Grandpa, you're experienced. Can you help me see what this is? Saying that, I opened the wooden box and showed it to him. Old Man Lee seemed uncomfortable, brushing off the spot where I had held him, not daring to touch the box. He glanced at it, and his face immediately showed astonishment. Oh heavens, child. What girl gave you this thing? I don't know either. This morning, I saw a magpie drop it at my door. I scratched my head and replied, Some girl has taken a liking to you, wants you to go to her house with a marriage proposal. Old Man Lee said, then shook his head in disbelief. Probably like others, he didn't want much contact with me either, so he turned to leave. As he walked, he muttered, How could a poor, unlucky kid like this have any girl interested in him? Watching Old Man Lee's back recede into the distance, then looking at the lock of hair in my hand, my face gradually darkened. Thinking of the records about my home in the notebook, I stubbornly refused to return. I lingered around the next village, killing time. By evening, too bored, I slowly made my way home. Unexpectedly, as soon as I reached the gate, I saw another red cloth-wrapped object in front of my door. I hurriedly opened it to look and immediately felt a chill down my spine. It was another wooden box. Inside was a lock of long, glossy black hair and a letter. The fragrance from this lock of hair was exactly the same as the scent from the girl who came to my house during the day. The letter's content read, "Betrothed to you since childhood, I've come after 10 years to fulfill the marriage agreement. I heard your mother has passed away. I'm truly sorry. Your humble servant, by Shirhan, wishes to rely on you until our hair is white, looking forward to tomorrow together. If you do not despise me, as long as you agree to continue the family line, I will immediately enter your household." That was the content of the letter. I hurriedly took out the item the magpie had dropped and compared them. Except for the material of the letter being different, everything else was identical. What in the world was going on? Could it be? Just as I was utterly confused, suddenly footsteps approached, accompanied by a man's voice. "Is the homeowner here? May I have a cup of water to drink?" Turning to look, I saw a strangely dressed man in front of my door. He had his hair tied in a bun, wore a set of gray robes, with a Bagua diagram on his chest, carrying a long sword on his back and an extremely old-looking bundle. The man was around 27 to 28 years old, looking like a beggar, his limbs covered in mud. "Wait a moment," I said, then hurriedly opened the door to get water for him. My home was very poor. Since childhood, I was used to wearing tattered clothes and worn-out straw sandals. Even drinking water was only stored in homemade bamboo tubes. I handed him a large bamboo tube full of water. He drank it all in one breath, then let out a loud burp before returning the bamboo tube. But his gaze was fixed on the inside of my house. "Young man, just as I passed the foot of the mountain, I noticed your house reeks of demonic aura. Has anything strange happened in your home recently?" "What strange thing?" I quickly shook my head, my mind still only on the lock of hair and the letter. I replied quickly, "No, nothing. You should go quickly. My home is very poor. There's nothing to eat here." It was truly poor. Ever since the little fox left, I had to go to other people's fields every day to dig up newly planted sweet potatoes to roast and eat, or secretly catch their chickens and ducks. The villagers probably knew I did it, but they didn't dare to confront me. "Then, the thing you just brought into the house, can you let me have a look?" He pointed inside the house and said, "This person was dressed strangely. The first time in my life I'd seen someone like this. Honestly, I was afraid he was a robber." Hearing he wanted to see my things, I immediately became vigilant and quickly waved my hand. "My home is destitute. I'm just a ghost child, with no father or mother. You'd better go rob someone else's house." "Hey, kid, why are you treating me like a robber?" He looked puzzled, then raised his hand to adjust his tattered clothes. "What is this?" "This is a Taoist robe. Can't you see I'm a poor Taoist?" "A poor Taoist?" I quickly retreated into the house, thinking, has this era gone mad? Even robbers introduced themselves as poor Taoists. Clearly knowing there were no adults in my house, he came here to bully me, right? Thinking that, I decided it was better to avoid trouble, so I said quickly, "I know you're suffering. The books say everyone has their own hardships. But you'd better go rob someone else's house. I really am just a ghost child, even worse off than you." Hearing me say that, he looked at me as if seeing something strange, finally couldn't hold back a laugh and asked, "Kid, what does ghost child mean?" I scratched my head, stammering in reply, "Probably means having no parents or something." I noticed the Bagua symbol on his chest looked familiar. In my village, whenever a family had a funeral, there were usually shamans in yellow Bagua robes presiding. But his robe was gray, old and torn, and upon closer look, it seemed like something picked up from somewhere. "Ha ha ha, rare. This kid is foolish, but also quite interesting." He threw his head back and laughed loudly. I was afraid he had bad intentions, knowing I had no parents and might get some idea, so I tried to put on a foolish smile and joined in. But just a few seconds later, his face suddenly hardened, his gaze turning fierce. He shouted, "What are you laughing at? Hurry into the house and bring that box out, or I'll beat you to death." I also froze stiff. A few seconds later, without a word, I ran straight into the house, got the box, and handed it to him. "Here, take it. It's not mine anyway. If you want it, just take it." "Not bad, kid. You know what's good for you," he said while opening the box to examine it. But while he was busy looking at the box, I quickly slipped into the house and burrowed under the pile of tattered bedding to find the steel pipe. This was something I picked up in town after the little fox left. My house was located on the mountainside, completely isolated from the village, so at night, this steel pipe was the only thing that made me feel safe. Holding the sturdy steel pipe firmly, I walked out to the living room. Just as I reached the door, I heard him muttering, "Humph, it really is a demon playing at matchmaking. This kid is lucky he met me." I gathered all my courage, rushed out, and swung the steel pipe straight down at his head. According to my calculations, this blow would definitely knock him out easily. Then I could call the villagers to deal with him. My village was poor and backward. Robbery wasn't rare. Occasionally, there were strangers loitering around the village, and the next morning, some family would find all their pots and pans gone. So the villagers hated thieves and would surely help me handle him. But unexpectedly, as the steel pipe was about to land, he swiftly raised his hand and caught it firmly, shocking me to the point of choking. What followed was a staring contest between me and him. My big eyes and his small ones stared unblinkingly for 1 to 2 minutes. Finally, he squinted and asked, his tone full of displeasure, "What the hell are you doing?" Chapter 7. The Old Woman in the Dark Forest. I stammered, unable to find a reason to justify my action that wouldn't make him angry. In the end, I had to play pitiful, pretending to be foolish. In my village, there was an unwritten rule. Fools have blessings, cheap lives are easy to live. Meaning the more foolish you acted, the less trouble you encountered. Some even named their children Chio Dan or Ma Er, hoping they would easily overcome adversity. Since childhood, I had no parents to teach me. Every time I was stopped by hoodlums in town, I only knew to play dumb. Seeing I was truly foolish, they naturally didn't bother causing trouble. Of course, that was after the little fox left. For some reason, when the little fox was still with me, even if village kids tried to pick a fight with me, the next day they would encounter misfortune like falling from a tree and breaking an arm or getting bitten by a snake inside their own homes. Looking at the items on the man's back before me, my heart gradually grew heavy. I heard robbers were often very cruel. Perhaps I would never have a chance to see the little fox again. But unexpectedly, he snatched the steel pipe from my hand, threw it aside, and said, "Go find something to cover the incense burner in your house. Since you gave me a tube of water, tonight I'll help you suppress the evil spirits." I looked at him, hesitated for a few seconds, finally laughed, then blinked and scurried into the house, locking the door tightly. "Hey, I know I can't beat you, but I have to be honest. My home is very poor, and I survive by stealing others' things. How about this? I'll point out a house for you. The first house at the village entrance is very rich. They have dozens of chickens. You should go there and take them." The first house at the village entrance was Zhang Tieju's house. Usually I just passed by there. I hadn't provoked them, but he liked splashing dirty water on me, scolding me with harsh words, and even forbade me from passing by his house. How could I not hate him? He shouted outside, "I'm not a robber. I'm a Taoist from Maoshan. Kid, your house is ghosts. Don't you know? Open the door quickly." I didn't respond. Maoshan, Cat Mountain, Dog Mountain. I'd never heard of them. Weren't Taoists just a title for robbers? After locking the door, I paid him no more mind. Instead, I took the torch I had prepared during the day and sneaked out through the back door. I wasn't afraid of him taking revenge either. If I couldn't find the little fox in the east, I would leave this place. My house had nothing valuable except a worn-out pot with a hole in the bottom. If he wanted it, he could take it. Anyway, the villagers didn't like me. The little fox was gone. I waited 18 years, and no relatives came looking for me. This poor, desolate village, staying was meaningless. Wandering outside might not be worse than here. I detoured through the forest behind a mountain to avoid being discovered by the old folks in the village, or they would stop me. After a winding half-day journey, when I reached the forest at the eastern foot of the mountain, dusk was already falling. I had never been here before. Arriving, I discovered the forest was vast and dark, surrounded by thick thorns. This area originally had a few fields, but they seemed to have been abandoned for many years, with no trace of human presence left. Just as I entered the pitch-black forest, I suddenly saw a figure step out from ahead. Because the trees were too dense, only faint light filtered through, and the figure stood stiffly, making me jump. I took a deep breath of cold air and quickly retreated. Soon after, an old woman slowly walked out, leaning on a cane. She looked very strange. There was no one like her in my village. Hunched over, short and small in stature, but her clothes were very elegant.